rabbit hole to be in.
I like that. Were there some major time periods of immigration in France? If we're looking for relatives that immigrated and kind of their records, where should we search for those immigration records?
So the thing that I would recommend first is to consider the records as much as you can from the receiving country where they arrived.
Okay.
Right? If we can find naturalization records, if we can find immigration passenger lists, if we can find church records in their receiving country, if they were Catholic and they got baptized their children Catholic once they arrived in the United States or in Canada or in Mexico, then often those records will name the place of origin of the parents and may even give the names of the grandparents that can help us to connect these families across the pond. So that would be my first strategy. This other things to consider are surname distribution throughout France. So if you have a unique surname that you're working with, the Institut National de Statistique et d'Études Économiques, so it's INSEE, the National Institute of Statistical Studies or Statistical and Economic Studies in France. Since the 1940s, when they were created, and then really digging in the 1970s, they've created an index of birthplaces of individuals based on their death record returns. So we get an indication of where different surnames in France are found from the time period about the 1890s through the present. And that can be really valuable because it can give us ideas of where certain surnames are commonly found, and then from there you can find even down to the communes or the specific towns where that surname is found to then find those locations. So that's another strategy that I often recommend. Even if your ancestor left France in the 1700s, the surname distribution patterns, if we're lucky enough, may have been stable enough to still have ancestors in that, or relatives in that same region with the surname of interest. So those are some of the recommendations I would offer. The other things that you might find are internal passports for population movement within France. So in order to move from town to town, people did need to obtain permission and get a passport for internal migration. And there's some records of external migration as well. Not as common. If you're lucky if you find it, but those are some things to maybe keep in mind.
That is super interesting. Did families, especially in the 1800s, they tended to stay close to their location of origin? Like families stayed that way, so that's why you can find those surname
typically. And I've had experience in looking for the origins of Huguenot families, who some of the family left during the revocation of the Edict of Nantes, where they said, nope, you can't be Protestant, you have to be Catholic. And so some of them fled over into Switzerland, and some of them didn't have the resources to do that and stayed behind and abjured their Protestant faith and became Catholic. And what I found is that the surname persisted, and we were able to use surname distribution maps to find the origin place of that family in France, because some of their family members had stayed, right? So even as early as the 1600s, you still see some of the same families in the same regions.
I think that's a neat thing. That doesn't happen in the U.S. very much.
No, it doesn't.
They're all dispersed everywhere. So, all right. This one.